Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange Pill Podcast. My name is Graham Elwood with Max Keiser.
Hi, Graham. Great to see you again.
Good to see
Reminiscing about the comedy Days of Yore.
Days of Yore.
And you talked to Lee Camp earlier, of course, good friend of ours, you know, keeping it real, keeping political comedy real and going. I love it, Lee. I love you, Lee.
It was awesome. And we have a very special guest on the Orange Pill Podcast. The little Hodler, Lina Seiche. No, I didn't mess it up.
Close enough. You messed it up.
I said it right off camera, of course. Say it.
Pictures or it didn't happen, yeah. Seiche.
Seiche.
Yeah, it's very German.
Very German.
Sound.
Ausgezeichnet.
And the so people always think we're angry. Yeah.
That's where that comes from. Yeah,
Hello.
that kind of.
Hi, Max.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Auf Wiedersehen. I lived in Germany for a year when I was a kid. I was telling Lina this. My father was a German theater professor. He had a PhD in German theater history, which is exciting when you're a kid.
That's amazing.
You know,
Does Brecht fall into that?
oh God,
Bertolt
Brecht and Goethe.
Yeah, you just told me about it.
Yeah, I learned. So what other kids were learning about, like Disney characters.
Three Penny Opera.
Yep. I learned about Bertolt Brecht as a kid, which is German existentialism when you're a kid is fun.
Yeah, it's a blast.
It's a riot.
Yeah, you can't really beat that for shits and giggles. German existentialism.
It is
for sure.
Please. And my other thing.
Is that before or after the Bauhaus movement?
That was, God, I want to say that. I think it's after Bauhaus.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Fine.
think it is after Bauhaus.
Great. Well, okay. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, we have a guest on the show, and since this is the Orange Pill Podcast, which is how you were orange pilled, we want to, bring people on the show who are big in the Bitcoin community. But I want to learn everybody's orange pill story. I want to know how you came to be a Bitcoiner and what happened, who orange pilled you, and when you first heard about it, did you get it immediately, or were you like, well, this is crazy, or whatever? So tell us when you were orange pilled and who did it.
My orange pill story is so lame though, because it was 2017, so I was one of them people. Like, you had all these ICOs happening, and it was a time that retail was like getting into Bitcoin. And I was at the time working in marketing, and I just got assigned to some project. Right. And I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. Actually, for like the first half year or so that I was working in the industry, I didn't even have any touching points with Bitcoin. So I was
But you were what do you mean by working in the industry? Like
the other stuff, the altcoins, the shitcoins.
Okay. Crypto. Got it.
Crypto. Yeah. So,
it's okay. It's not. We want this to be a safe space because we're not saying we support shitcoins, but we all have a journey. Not a lot of us have a journey of, we heard about crypto and didn't know the difference between Bitcoin and crypto and went crazy or I'm going to buy this coin for 5 cents and it's going to make me blah, blah, blah. And it didn't happen. So,
fair
enough.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, that was that. I was there for like a couple months, and I was working for some projects there. I didn't know what I was doing. For me, I was used to doing marketing projects. So for me, it was, just another social media job or something. What would happen is they would take you to like you had all these blockchain conferences, right? Those are conferences where you have the guys in suits coming, and they come with their weather forecast coin and their supply chain coin, right? And they go
guys
there
in suits I just pictured these very ominous looking guys with like briefcases. Yeah. Here's my weather coin.
Yeah, they go there, they go to those conferences to find partners, right? And just to shill each other their coins. And I did that for some time, and the more I did it, the more I was at these events, the more I felt like, what am I doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose?
And this was in Europe mostly?
I was in Asia mostly.
Asia?
Actually, yeah. I was living in Asia at the time. Yeah. So
you were working in Asia, living and working in Asia.
Yeah, I've actually been traveling for 10 years. So I'm German, but I haven't lived in Germany for 10 years.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so I did that. And then after some time, I met some Bitcoiners. So I was going to meetups. That was around the Philippines a lot, where then people would hand me books. So the first book I read was The Internet of Money, and then the Bitcoin Standard. And then I saw, hold on, there's more. it's not just like
Right.
there's some purpose there.
So the Internet of Money, Andreas
Yes.
Antonopoulos.
Yes, which is
Now,
a really good book to get started because it's so
Sure.
short and easy to read.
I've heard a lot of people that book is part of their orange pill journey. Is
Definitely
reading that.
Yeah.
book.
Andreas is definitely an orange pill. Lots of people, and when I go around the world traveling to these conferences myself, particularly in Latin America and Central America, you go to a meetup and you'll see the Pope and Andreas. Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. You know, he definitely orange pill. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
back
Yeah.
to some Pope stories.
Yeah, but it was actually that book that made me for the first time think about inflation. So I remember that was the first time that I actually used my brain to make some connections with why there is a reason of being for Bitcoin. Because I remember in school in Germany, we would talk about inflation, but we would talk about it as a given. So we would talk about how at the bakery, you know, we have really good bread in Germany, but it would keep getting more expensive. So my dad would always say, yeah, it's normal. Like it's 5 cents more now. That's how it happens. It's inflation.
Right. Well, famously, people talk about inflation and hyperinflation. Of course, Weimar Germany is the textbook classic case
People
of
don't remember that.
hyperinflation. So was that touched upon in your schooling days at all?
Yes, but you know what happens is you tend to think that doesn't happen, like it's never going to happen again. We've been there, we've done that, so now we've learned, so we're going to be fine.
Human beings learning from their mistakes.
Yeah.
What a novel concept.
Then, of course, you know, the Bundesbank, which became anti-inflation for many years after the war because the horrors of hyperinflation that kind of led to the war. And one of the interesting things about when the euro was introduced, the Bundesbank became kind of the center of the euro. But over the years, under Mario Draghi and other directors of the Bundesbank, they became more inclined to print, and bring inflation back. So you have Christine Lagarde and that group that are in now that have completely forgotten all of the horrors of the hyperinflation. And that's a country that you would think would never want to go there. But just like every country in the world, they are once again experimenting with this idea of print until you drop. So.
It's too tempting to have that button.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, Germany, you know, has learned a lot since World War II in terms of the Holocaust, but then money, no country seems to learn about money. They just seem to go back, no matter what mistakes they might have made in other areas, they always seem to keep making, like, money is this crack pipe that no country can.
Right. Well,
Incentives.
going back further, right? In World War I, Germany loses, then they have to pay reparations. And the cost of reparations were astronomical. And this is what got them into the money printing game, which led to political instability and political setup for World War II. But again, it goes back to money, doesn't it? In post-World War I. So it all goes back to money. And we say, so now you've been traveling all over the place, and the message of Bitcoin and how it relates to inflation and how it actually is deflationary, does that resonate with anybody, or is it just plushy dolls?
I think deflation's a difficult concept to understand for people.
But this guy used to be a full-size Bukele, and it got deflated. I mean, this used to be 6 feet tall, and then he became Bukele size, 5'8". Just joking.
Yeah, we're making
And
an
now
even
he's
smaller one.
only 12 inches tall.
Look at that.
It's perfect
But
size for
so the
cuddling.
inflation aspect, that's what resonated with you in finding Bitcoin.
A lot of aspects resonated with me, but that was the first one that I connected with, because I realized that just because it was taught to us as being just another thing that you have in your life, it's whatever.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
because it was taught to us as just another thing that happens and that is like normal doesn't mean that you have to accept it as that. And it's a very I want to say German, but not just German thing to accept what is told to you by the authority or the authorities or the powers that be. We are very, and this is probably like very likely to be our downfall. We're very trusting of these official sources of information. Even now, even though it's getting less because people are realizing that there's a lot of manipulation, narratives, and lies going on. We're very trusting of the things that are taught to us, and that was one of them. So we thought, okay, inflation happens. I remember they had this graph where it's like, the economy goes like this, it's normal. So right now we're here, gonna go down here, gonna get better, just get used to it. And then with...
Right, well, Germany has almost like the original welfare state under Bismarck, I believe. And so the state is extremely well regarded in that sense, and they provide the welfare net, the safety net, and the institutions of the state are in high regard in Germany, and so people are not in the habit of rebelling against the state.
Yeah.
And so when you have money that separates money from state, you're going against orthodoxy of certainly German orthodoxy, but also European orthodoxy across Europe. It's a very statist continent. And this is why they don't grok Bitcoin, not even in the UK, where you would think that they would be a little bit more open to it. They are not. I mean, they have a freaking monarch in the UK, King Charles. I mean, they're still living 1,000 years ago. But you snapped out of it. You broke out of it. So now you're seeing this new kind of money that's transformative. And what has been your experience in El Salvador since you've been here? You've been living here relatively recently.
Yeah.
And what's been that like? Do you see Bitcoin playing out in not just in how people might use it to buy a pupusa, but just in the mindset?
I think so, and I think it's a long-term process. I think it's a sign of having a really long time horizon, which is so unusual. First of all, on the government level, it's extremely unusual for a government to do something that's low time preference, right? And Bitcoin is the ultimate low time preference policy that you could adopt. And I think, and I see it happening, that you, with the things you do as a leader, as a politician, be it, you shape your audience in a way. So by President Bukele, for example, by demonstrating a common sense approach, by demonstrating, look, here we're doing this thing, but we're looking at it on a long time horizon, that reflects on the people as well. And there is an openness to try and understand it. And in terms of what I see in El Salvador on the ground, everybody knows about Bitcoin. Everybody knows about Bitcoin, and I feel there is more because of those government policies. There is more openness to understanding it than you would get in many other places. There's still long ways to go. There's still stigma. I hear that too. A lot of people still feel like, oh, I don't know about it. What about FTX or whatever? That didn't do us any good in terms of reputation. But the doors are open, let's say.
I think that's really interesting. That's what I've noticed as well. Because I always say, anywhere I go in El Salvador, I always say, accept our Bitcoin. I always ask. And even since when I was here for the first time in June, again in November, and now, I'm hearing more people say, not yet. I encountered some people in June who were like, huh, or no. Now they're just like, oh, not yet. So that tells me they're even investigating it, because they now know somebody. They've got some business that they know that's taking Bitcoin, and they're going, oh, we're putting some to the side. There's a gym that just opened up in El Tunco, Vibes Wellness Center, and they take Bitcoin. And I worked out there this morning. And the guy was asking me, he's like, well, what do I do with this Bitcoin? I go, save some of it. I go, if you got to use some to pay your bills, that's fine. But I go, save some of it. And he's like, okay. And I said, just save 20% of your income if you can, or 30, and put it to the side. I go, Bitcoin. And again, I say, I always tell people in the simplistic terms, I go, Bitcoin in the short run will do this. But then I go, in the long run, it's going to do this. And he goes, oh, and he got that. Those two simple gestures.
So he was a mime.
Yes, and then he went like that, and then there was
that's
a
how
wind
you were able to communicate.
Yes,
Finally, you orange pilled him through the Marcel School of Orange Pilling.
Yeah.
So he had the orange face.
Yeah,
It's like, yes, hello, and you're not Pip, but Bit. It's Bit. is there. But, that's a good point about adoption, is that adoption is, first of all, awareness. So here in El Salvador, awareness is 100%. So adoption we're 100%, you could say. Then you have people actually using it day to day, then that's 10, 15, 20% growing every day, as we say. Then there's people who are adopting El Salvador, as Stacy is saying and pushing, bringing big companies to adopt El Salvador with their Bitcoin companies, right? So we have all these big Bitcoin companies coming to El Salvador and adopting El Salvador. So there's three ways that adoption works. Of course, in the mainstream media, they always talk exclusively about, well, I went into a store, they didn't take Bitcoin, so it must be a failure, right? So they don't, because of course hasn't been any good coverage of Bitcoin yet in the mainstream media.
That makes me that's so laughable. When people in the US go, yeah, I hear you only adoptions, and a lot of the countries only like 20, 30%. I go, yeah, that's 20 or 30% more than all of the United States. There's not one place. There's one pawn shop I saw in Venice Beach that had a Bitcoin sign in it. There's like maybe a handful of like Bitcoin ATMs in LA. Yeah. But you can't spend it on anything there. And then they talk about, this is what drives me nuts about America. It's just like they refuse to look in their own backyard.
It's this shrimp theory or whatever they call it, right? Where the shrimp, there's a bunch of shrimp in a bucket, and one tries to get out, the others pull him back in.
The crabs.
Oh, crabs. Sorry, crabs.
We're on crustacea.
Yeah.
Good analogy. We're on crustacea. The crabs in a bucket.
Oh, yeah,
it's not the shrimp. The shrimp are actually next to the frogs. And the frogs in the bucket are boiling. The crabs are grabbing one another, and the shrimps are just smoking a joint and chilling. Like, what are these crabs and frogs up to? I don't know. Pass me another bong head. So it's got like a whole menagerie of metaphors, like interacting in somebody's dank.
I just like picturing crabs doing bong rips. That's what I like.
Yeah, you're mixing the crabs with the shrimp. Oh, that's because the crabs they're crabby. It's against their brand to be chilled. It's not brand specific. It's off brand for a crab to smoke a joint because they're crabby. That's where you get the word I'm crabby. It doesn't work. Where the shrimp are like, no, I don't know.
They're just chilling.
I'm just, I'm shrimpy. It's all shrimpy. I'll probably be in a shrimp cocktail at some point. I don't care. I really don't care.
That's what they aspire to, is the shrimp cocktail.
I was in a shrimp cocktail at the Four Seasons Hotel, damn it. That was my cousin Bobby. Well-known shrimp. The greatest of all shrimp. And they're like, yeah, man, that's cool, man. I ended up in a lobster shack hoagie with some plastic bass, a sea bass. It was nightmarish. Rancid mayonnaise. It went down hard, man. It's tough life. Tough life out there. It was tough, very tough. The mean streets of the aquarium, the shrimp farm. It's a dangerous place, the shrimp farm. First of all, it's all in Thailand, and I don't know Thai. But
where did you take that from?
I don't mean to interrupt.
Just going off on a 3X shrimp play.
All you can eat shrimp.
It's really good. I want to ask you this too. So you've told us your journey, how you got orange pilled, and the thing that I love too about Bitcoiners is they all kind of bring their own unique thing to it. And then I started following you online just from this little Hodler. So you have a cartoon and the doll and everything. Tell us how you started doing that. So you're in Bitcoin, you're loving it. And then how did this start?
I was in Bitcoin, and most importantly was because I was on Bitcoin Twitter. So Bitcoin Twitter, I started this 2020 around that time. Just for fun, just on the side, because I remember at the time I was trying to crack the Bitcoin Twitter code and figure out how to do tweets that do well, right? And at the time, what would do well was these super hyper bullish, somewhat controversial Bitcoin tweets, and they're good, right?
Sure.
They're good, but for me, my problem was I would do them and they would do well. But I got so stressed when people went off in the comments and
you get over that. A few shots of heroin, and it doesn't. You're like, Okay, he bought at 69,000. Don't worry, buddy. It's coming back someday.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, sure. Michael Saylor just bought another 300 million. So it all works out in the end.
Yeah, so you do that, or you make plushies. So
Right.
So I did that, and I remember every time I would put out a tweet, I was like, which is kind of silly, but I was like, oh my god, what if people criticize me? Like I was really, because I really like harmony and peace and whatever, right?
Sure.
So I like one day I had an idea for a tweet, and I don't know why, it just randomly came to me that I could put it in comic format. I'd never done it before. I don't know where it came from. It was a random thought, and I just did it. And then I looked at I made the comic with PowerPoint actually, and like stock photos and stuff. It was very raw, very ugly actually, but got the point across. It was right after the halving, and Bitcoin was like in the 9,000s. And like everybody knew, as soon as it goes above 10K, we're good, right? Then it's just going straight up. So it was just a matter of time. And it was after like the 2-year bear market, and in March that crashed, and it was a very hard time for Bitcoiners. So I made this comic where the little hodler is just struggling through that entire bear market, and at the end, the little no coiner comes and tells him, you're so lucky you got in under 10K, and because we knew it was going to happen, right? So I posted that. And that went viral. Like that was my most viral tweet at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
There it is.
that's how I knew there was a niche there.
The comic strip is awesome. Like, so it's minimalistic in a way, right? It's lines, some few text.
Yeah.
But it's very
as little text
impactful.
as possible. Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of a creative guideline, just as minimal text as possible.
Yeah, the less text, the better.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you look out there in the panoply of cartoonists like Scott Adams, for example, and Dilbert, or Charles Schultz and Snoopy, I mean, do you have anybody that you particularly admire now that you're the most retweeted cartoonist in El Salvador by the president of El Salvador?
That's a pretty big claim, man.
Right? The most retweeted cartoonist in the world by the president of El Salvador.
There's not a lot of cartoonists getting retweeted by presidents.
That's right.
In
That's
general.
in the Guinness Book of World Records under. So, I mean, so who, maybe you don't have any thought about this, but are there any cartoonists that you think of like, oh yeah, I kind of like that one or this one or stylistically or?
Yeah, there are. I didn't think of them when I started doing the little hodler. Maybe it was a subconscious thing. So I know for sure that my style is very heavily influenced by anime and Japanese manga and stuff. Right. Because I used to be actually when I was a kid, I was like my entire school career, I was planning and working on moving to Japan later on. I did live in Japan for some time, and so I'm like, obviously it's really cute and it's like kawaii, and that's
right. Like that Hello Kitty image from Japan is amazing because it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's effectively one drawing.
Yeah.
Right. Whoever the guy who did it is.
I think it was a lady. Yeah,
is a lady, she's very well known, obviously, and she just has made this huge empire out of this one. Isn't there a word for this, which is in particular in Japanese culture, where the word is about cuteness, something that's cute.
Kawaii, cute.
And that's a Japanese.
There's a Japanese word for cute, yeah.
It's that factors heavily into, because a lot of things in Japanese culture are this cuteness factor about them, and they just go gaga over cute things, right? Do you have Japanese translations of this?
Hopefully soon. Yeah, I don't even have German translations. I am really lazy with the translations. But now we're doing Spanish because I feel it's probably pretty long overdue. Yeah,
makes sense.
Makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, but I'm slowly working myself there. Yeah.
So then, is this like your main business now? Is doing the cartoon? And this is awesome.
It's a very wholesome job. Yeah, it started with the comics, and then. Just again for fun, I made a plushie prototype like almost a year later. I posted it on my Twitter, and then people said, "Oh my god, I want to buy this!"
Right.
It's the thing that I wouldn't have. If I had sat down and thought about, I'm gonna I'm going to open a business in this industry, and I'm going to make a business plan. And if I had thought about whether it's smart to make plushies for a heavily, like, very technical, very, like, male-dominated industry, lots of grown-up men, like, I probably wouldn't have done it, right? But I didn't think about it. And in the end, there was a market for that because, you know, people have children, people have family members that they want to orange pill, and we actually get a lot of emails where there's girls, women, and they're like, oh, I want to get something for my boyfriend. He's a Bitcoiner, but I don't know what to get him. Like, so I bought him a little hodler, and he loved it. And
they're adorable and they're awesome. And I think you bring up a great point too, since the Bitcoin space is still by and large pretty male, and this like brings a different energy to the space in a very good way. How have you encountered that? Like, I'm sure you're asked this question a lot. What's it like being a woman in Bitcoin? But like,
exactly in that tone too, all the time. What's it like being a woman?
Yeah, I mean, what?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing I've noticed. Bitcoin people are very kind of accepting, and they're all cool with. I
have a problem with being put on women in Bitcoin panels, for example. I think there's a sense the wrong message. It starts from the wrong hypothesis, which is like it's somehow hard or it's somehow difficult. I understand the point where. I half understand it. I don't like saying we need more women in Bitcoin. There's reasons, right? It's very technical. It's finances. It's economics. It's even politics to some degree. Like, it's a lot of things that are generally very male dominated, and there are probably reasons for that. Now, I didn't verify this, but I think Jordan Peterson said men are more interested in things, women are more interested in people, and you can see it in the choice of career and and the choice of those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So I don't find it unusual that it's harder for women to find an initial access to Bitcoin, which the unfortunate part, I think, is that money is for everybody. Everybody uses money, but finding that access to it is a bit, maybe it takes many women longer. And for me too, I just kind of
Getting back to Japan for a second. So in Japan, the Japanese household, the prototypical Mrs. Watanabe, is in charge of the household finances. Mm-hmm. And she gives her husband a salary. Yeah. And the women control all the money. And when I was working on Wall Street, there was this idea like, well, has Mrs. Watanabe, found, is she putting money into gold? Is she putting money into bonds? Because they're control trillions worth of cash. And so there, in that culture, you have kind of the flip side in terms of women and finance. So I'm wondering at what point now these ETF products that are accessible and pretty easy to use, when will Mrs. Watanabe of Japan start to buy Bitcoin? I haven't seen that headline yet, but it would be a natural thing. It's a huge pocket of cash, which would fit their need because the Bitcoin does protect against inflation and everything else that goes with it. But
and they have a lot of issues in Japan as well, and so they have they have an aging population, and they're from what I understand, they're even looking to have more people move there because their population is dying off, and they don't have as many people there, and they don't because it's
that's true in a lot of countries.
Yeah,
population decline is happening around the world. Mm-hmm. For various reasons, but so as the women in Bitcoin, it's because women in the internet is when I was starting in the internet, it's a 95% male, and Bitcoin came out of the internet, so it's definitely you don't have a big female population into Bitcoin, but as you say, it is money, and just like money is what happens in a lot of countries. This is why in India, the gold is given on the marriage gift, and in the case of a woman losing their husband or something of that nature, they have their gold that they got. That's their wealth. I mean, there's this tradition of wealth, so it should fit really, really well. But I was going to ask you about this cartoon because this is a cartoon. This is a technology cartoon that's technology people love this cartoon. It's called XKCD. Do you know this one?
Can I see it?
Yeah. This is a very like line drawings, and geeks and nerds will share this cartoon with each other. And it's like geeky humor. Like they used the wrong port on that GIF, you know. Hey,
okay,
Brad,
I get it.
you know, yeah. So, but that's like
I love stuff
the
like that.
geekiest cartoon I'm aware of that I've seen. But you're in the Bitcoin space with this. So it's really powerful stuff. I mean, I read them, I see it, I read the panels and I'm like, and then I get to the last panel, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of funny. You know,
I mean, you just had one on Twitter today or yesterday that was just a real, it was so simple and so beautiful. And this is because I think I'm one of the people who I'm not a technical or a finance person. So when I first heard about Bitcoin and crypto, I did not get it. I was like, no, I don't get it. But when it was explained to me in simplistic terms, that's when I got it. Like I needed it explained to me, like if a horsey has a Bitcoin and that, you know, like that's how I need Bitcoin explained to me, right? Because I'm a creative. We talked about this in the last episode. Creatives are more, I can think in these creative terms, but the technical stuff is a little challenging. So you had one that was, it showed the little hodler in a pit, and it was like, it was just two panels, and the crypto was like trying to send stuff down, and they had to take an elevator. It was all complicated to get the hodler out of the pit. And then the next minute was just Bitcoin just put a board across and just walked across it. And I was like, that's so beautiful and simplistic. And to the point here of like, sure, there's might be more men in Bitcoin, but really Bitcoin is money and everybody uses money. So the thing, like for me, one of the reasons I came down here, one of the reasons I got into Bitcoin and doing this show is finding all of these groups. Everyone can benefit from Bitcoin who need it. And how do we get the message to them? My message, I'm trying to get lefties and progressives and artists to understand Bitcoin and why this can empower you. I'm part of the SAG after the Actors Union. I want them to put our pension in Bitcoin, or at least a percentage of it. And I want lefty, like I spoke with, the woman running for president of the Green Party, Jill Stein. I want the Green Party. I'm setting up a meeting with them. So I think that's what's important. And how do we all do that in our own unique ways? And what you're doing, this plushy toy that's so fun and has the childlike qualities of fun, but also then can educate. Because some kid's going to see that and go, that's cool. What's Bitcoin?
Oh, it happens all the time.
Right?
Yeah. It's very, it's very unassuming. You know, there's no agenda here. It's just cute. You don't get the little hodler and he starts talking to you about proof of work or whatever, right? It's just, it's not, I'm not forcing anything on you. So, and neither does he. So it's very friendly, very unassuming, very easy going, and very cuddly. So it's just, I strongly believe that adoption, obviously with adoption, you go like this and you reach a tipping point and then it goes crazy, right? And I think that tipping point is when it kind of becomes normal or cool. Like I remember when Facebook was becoming a thing in our school, first nobody was using it, and then suddenly, like one day I came to school, everybody was using it, and then you had to use it. So you just kind of make it feel normal, which is back to the point of like getting women or whatever, getting everybody interested in money. What I'm seeing is a growth in like the, what do you call it, personal finance influencer space. So what's happening is there's a lot of people who are creating personal finance content lately, and they're speaking to a very wide audience, and they're making it very easy to understand. And they're telling you, look, just like make a budget or whatever, just like pay off your credit card debt or something. Not that simply, but they make it accessible and they make it easy and they make it feel like it's something that, you should have been doing this for a long time, or this has been around. You just like start doing it like me or like this guy or like that guy, like everybody else. And by I'm trying to make it very easy and normal and very not something where you have to get over yourself or there's like a big obstacle you have to overcome. you just kind of, he's just there. So, and then you just like see the comic or whatever and just get the book.
How many people do you think you've orange pilled just with the doll or the cartoon? Or I mean, like that you directly know that you have, or
directly, oh my God. Directly, I wouldn't know, but I know it's been viewed like over 100 million times, and we have him like he's in over 60 countries, and I know that probably a lot of people in El Salvador now know the little Hodler, luckily. So he's, I noticed that subliminally he's been on a lot of people's minds. So a lot of times it happens that people say, "Oh yeah, I know those comics," and then it's like I've seen those around. Those are really cool, and then they make the connection, and then they realize, oh, it's that guy, or like, oh, you made that, or whatever. So he's around. I don't know how many people, like, but we have, like,
Nice.
we sold many of them. So
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin has no central organization and there's no marketing team, and it's always been a challenge to kind of market. How do you market this thing? And so this is, kind of fills the bill in a lot of ways. It's just a cute, plushy way to introduce to HODL. I mean, the Hodler concept is a primary concept of the Bitcoin experience, a low time preference, to HODL. So what does that even mean? So even if you just start there, you are already now down in a path, and that's also a path that's non-technical in that respect. The low time preference in HODLing is you don't need to know the technical side to get on that into that entrance, right? But I wanted to ask you something. So you said that you found your métier, as it were, just kind of circumstantially after traveling and things like that. And a lot of times people during my life, they come up to me and they're like, I feel stuck. What should I do? And I always say, just travel, travel, get out of yourself, go to another country. And how important is that? Can you comment on that? What do you think about that?
Oh, I think it is extremely, extremely enriching. It's a type thing, right? So for some people, it's not. For some people, it's not attractive. Like they're not interested in traveling. Where I think actually that's a comfort zone thing, because if you travel, you step out of your comfort zone, right? So they say the earlier you start, the easier it is, but also the harder it is. But it does so much to broaden your horizon, because first of all, you put yourself in a situation that's way outside your comfort zone. You have to you're faced with things that you don't know how to deal with. Maybe language barriers, culture clash, different food, different weather, different lifestyle, different people, and your friends are somewhere else, your family's somewhere else. It's you
flexing muscles you didn't know you had.
Yeah, because you have to flex
because you have
to survive, to get by.
Exactly. And then that does a lot to you. Like I noticed it over the years, and I'm still noticing it, that it gives you some kind of it gives you a kind of confidence with time, that you're like, yeah, I can, actually I did that, I survived that, I grew doing that. So it gives you some kind of inner peace, and it makes you feel more settled in that sense. And also just people live differently throughout the world. We have a lot of things in common. A lot of things are also different. We have different ways we approach Bitcoin. For example, a German will approach it very differently from somebody in Turkey, from somebody in El Salvador, Malaysia, or the Philippines. And in that sense, we approach many things very differently. At the same time, there are a lot of commonalities. So,
yeah, there's a lot of self-discovery that goes on, because the affectations one adopts and the masks one uses to get by in their home country and culture don't work in other places. So you have to take off your mask. You have to let go of your affectations. And what do you find? You find that you're closer to who you really are. And then that's a much more valuable version of who you are. You can then rely on as a resource to power, your life going forward. And that's the thing about people. Most people get very attached to their persona.
Oh yeah.
And they're not really their genuine self. And it's tiresome, especially to be around. One of the flip sides of, the negatives of traveling so much is that it's hard to be around artificial people. It's just like so tiresome. They're just like, I know you're faking it. You have nothing genuine to say because you haven't left this 5-block area in 30 years.
And to that point, you meet when you travel, you have so many interesting conversations with somebody. You're just sitting there, like talking to somebody, having this interesting conversation. The place I'm staying in, El Tunco, has a shared kitchen. And talk about getting out of your comfort zone. I'm a guy who lives alone. I kind of like things a certain way. I eat, I have this very specific foods I eat, but I was like, no, man, I'm down with this. And it's really cool. It's forcing me. I'm talking to people already from different parts of the world, Canadian, this, that, like asking people, El Salvadorians. There's an El Salvadorian who grew up in the States who's now back down. And I'm sitting there like, oh man, because food is such a communal thing. Everybody eats everywhere. And you have to talk. And again, because it's a communal kitchen and it's all a bunch of travelers. It's all a bunch of people who are used to just striking up complete conversations with strangers and getting to know them. And it's like, oh, wow, cool. And where are you from? And where have you traveled? And what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing a Bitcoin podcast. And they're just like, that's wild. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, and I say, some of my friends back in the States, I said, I'm going to El Salvador to do a Bitcoin podcast. They're like, all right, well, Graham's nuts. Graham's out of his mind. That's cool. Yeah. That was bananas. That's great. And you do have to and again, I've been studying Spanish about 6 months. I live in California where there's a lot of Latinos, but I'm forced here a lot. The majority of this crew here, which is fantastic, they don't speak a lot of English. So I'm having to figure this out with them. And I love that challenge. I was communicating with them today. I was like, oh shit, I got to use Google Translate. I don't like using Google Translate, but I had to go into the details. And they're like, oh, okay. And we're figuring out how to set the cameras up. And I'm like, I'm producing and directing a show to people in a language I'm not very good at. This is awesome. I don't know, man. It's just,
yeah,
it is good to get out of your comfort zone.
It gives you an openness too, and that's one of the biggest things I've noticed in myself as well, because there's so much we don't know. There's so much we will never know. And even if you travel, there's places you will never go. There's places you will never see, people you will never meet, but you can learn and you can take in as much as you can, as you want. And you don't just broaden your own horizon, but you become more open to ideas, which I think the worst thing that can happen to you is if you close yourself off to new ideas, different thoughts, which is what we're seeing, for example, in the prevailing official European opinion of El Salvador, for example. It's very easy to go and say, oh, that country, I don't know, looks pretty authoritarian to me. So yeah, I know. So, but then when you come here, how about you talk to the people here, and
what is the biggest thing you've noticed since living here?
Optimism, and it sounds so cheesy, but hope.
Yeah.
Look, if you go walk on the streets here and Germany, you ask a German on the street, how's life now compared to 10 years ago? They tell you, oh, it was so much better 10 years ago. Stuff was cheaper. My work was more fun and government was better or whatever. If you do that here, you get the opposite response. And that's the first thing I noticed coming here, is that whereas in many countries around the world, people will feel like things are going downhill. People are just complaining all the time. And I can't blame them because things are looking bad. Here, people feel like things are going upward. People are excited. People are proud to talk about their country. People are proud to welcome tourists, to welcome companies, to welcome expats and show them, look, this is my country. We have pupusas, we have surf, we have volcanoes, and they talk about their government. They're proud to talk about their government. That's so new to me. I'm not used to that. And that's amazing. I love that. I love the optimism. And if I am able to choose, if I'm able to say, look, I can live somewhere where I'm looking at the authorities and I'm going dude, what are you did you leave your brain somewhere this morning? What the hell are you doing? Or I go somewhere where I see, oh, there's an actual leader in office who uses common sense, who approaches
What?
things. Yeah.
A leader that uses common sense? I'm
Right.
sorry, I'm from America. We don't have that.
That is so weird that the media has to paint it as, well, that's probably a bad guy because that doesn't happen. Like there must be something there.
Yeah, the base case for everybody's narrative is how to deal with depression and loss everywhere in the world. Except the base case here is how do you deal with all this success? How do you deal with all this hope? How do you deal with all this optimism? That's a quality problem to have, and that's what it's like here. I mean, people are genuinely like liberated. Mm-hmm. They've been liberated after 40 years of excruciatingly horrible pain and misery on so many of the population, and to come out of it on the other end, to find themselves really the bastion of freedom, economic freedom and hope. The new Statue of Liberty is a volcano in El Salvador. This is the new shining city on a hill, and people are just filled with gratitude. I mean, they're just like, okay, I'm digging this vibe. We went in front of the palace to hear the president's acceptance speech when he won, and it was jam-packed, but everybody was completely chilled. Like nobody was acting out, nobody was running around crazy, nobody was acting like an idiot. Everyone was chilled. It was close, but it was like everyone was just grooving and vibing. I know that if that was a city in the United States, it would just get out of hand. There would be a riot. They would go crazy. There would be just some really unacceptable stuff going on. And here it was really like a very kind of relaxed atmosphere. And it added to the overall good well-being of the good vibes of the event.
Yeah, and I've really felt that. And so Lina, as somebody who you've traveled a lot now as a Bitcoiner, right? What is the overall attitude? And I know, like you say, a Bitcoiner in Turkey is going to have a different view than Germany or El Salvador. But what is if there is one, like a through line or an overall? I know Bitcoiners are all different types of people from which is one of the power and strength of it. But also, do you find any sort of through line with all of them? Like you say, hope is the prevailing thing down here in El Salvador, which I totally agree too. I was like, wow, I've been to all these countries. I went to 6 different countries last October, a little over a year ago of 22 on a tour. It was cool. I got to see some countries that were nice, but I did not feel the hope that I feel here. So what do you feel in terms of traveling and meeting all of these Bitcoiners and interacting with them, since so many of them love this little Hodler cartoon? What do you notice that, if any, of the consistencies with Bitcoiners?
I think that depends on how far into their journey people are as Bitcoiners. So, because it takes some time, and then suddenly you start thinking about a lot of things that maybe aren't even directly related to Bitcoin. So, like the easiest one would be questioning the headlines, right? Because you see the way that a lot of media covers Bitcoin. And you're like, well, hold on, you didn't research that properly, or hold on, like that's the best case. The worst case is you actually have an agenda. Then you start questioning the other things that may be reported, and you start wondering, okay, like who can I actually believe here? And I might have to do some more research. So I see that in a lot of people that are further along in that journey. And in general, and again, I'm talking people who are like Bitcoiners, like they've been around and maybe they've been through a cycle or something, right? They have a sort of inner peace. They look at that chaos that is going on everywhere around the world, and they're like, yeah, it's pretty bad, but at least there's one thing that I know is gonna pull through, like one thing, and then I can save my money in there. It's not even it goes from investing to saving. Right, so it becomes this kind of tranquility that you have, and that I see regardless of where I go. But on a greater scale, it's not easy to get to that point, right? It takes time, and it's very hard to even go through a Bitcoin cycle because the bear markets are really painful. So you'll have different in different places, priorities are different. So let's say you look at Turkey. Turkey's a country with super high inflation because your money loses value so quickly. People try to make money very quickly. So for a lot of them, Bitcoin is like too slow. not too slow in terms of transactions, too slow in terms of going up. And they will look for some coins that they can trade, that they can pump and dump or whatever. And again, I blame the people who do that. I don't blame the people who fall for it, because if you are in a situation where the money in your bank account is just fading away. Yeah. I remember when I first went to Turkey, it was the exchange rate between dollar and lira was $1 to 9.3 lira. And a month later, it was 15.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if that is what you're looking at, then you feel like you need, oh my God, I need to like, you start panicking, right? It's harder. That's what I mean when I say people have different accesses and different ways they view Bitcoin. So whereas, for example, in Germany, people are more like, yeah, well, maybe I would buy a house, but oh, it's so expensive. So maybe I put some money here and forget about it for 10 years. It's a completely different approach. But once you have that baseline understanding, then a lot of views are the same. So I can travel to Malaysia, or I can travel to Taiwan, or I can come here, or I can go to Los Angeles. And if I see the Bitcoiners there, we immediately have a baseline understanding, and we can talk about a lot of things that we know. We don't need to even explain those to each other, right? So that is something that you can see anywhere with Bitcoiners.
Well, we should talk a little bit about, as we have a little time left here, with the altcoins or the shitcoins, and we should talk about the people that do them. There are some people out there being nefarious and being very criminal, and they sucker people in. People who are new into this Bitcoin or crypto space go, oh, Bitcoin and crypto is all the same thing. Oh, cool. This one's at 5 cents. So maybe it'll go to 40,000 like Bitcoin, and I'll be a millionaire. So, but then there are people that are clearly doing pump and dump scams. And Max, let's talk about the law in this country and how significant it is in terms of not just for this country, but again, how El Salvador is setting the example on what to do. So you tweeted out earlier today, you tweeted several times about the law here. Let's explain that to our audience who might not be aware.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have a nation state that's made Bitcoin legal tender and is developing the brand of Bitcoin country. So there's two pieces of that puzzle. One is to build out the Bitcoin country brand to attract Bitcoiners and to exemplify the best that Bitcoin has to offer. The other side is to keep out the shitcoins. And that side, it takes a lot of work. And so there are a few different ways that we are building barriers for shitcoins, one being the legal barrier. So when Max and Stacy arrived here, about 2 years ago, it became clear that there needed to be a legal kind of response or a legal statement from the country in terms of what Bitcoin is and what it isn't. So this led to the Bitcoin law, as it's known, or the digital asset law, which states that Bitcoin is money, everything else will be considered an unregistered security. So this is what Gary Gensler also kind of hints at, but the way that they do it in the U.S. is through through prosecution. They do enforcement through prosecution. They might decide suddenly that you are an unregistered security, and so they go after you, but they don't state categorically in legal terms that everything that's not Bitcoin is an unregistered security. But we took the step of saying that's our position. And so the put that into context, you have people pushing back and saying, well, you're anti-innovation, you're anti-freedom, aren't you? And no, that's not really how to look at it. Any incremental gain that might be gleaned by allowing something other than Bitcoin to exist alongside Bitcoin is dwarfed by the brand value that comes with Bitcoin country. Mm-hmm. There's nothing any project out there can offer that would be worth sacrificing the brand of Bitcoin country. And this has now been proved by what's happening in this country in terms of, I would posit that because Bitcoin demonetizes violence, well, which came first? The regime exceptional to put the gangsters in jail or making Bitcoin legal tender? Well, Bitcoin made legal tender came first, didn't it? I would posit that there's an ethos there about demonetizing violence, which Bitcoin does due to its unconfiscatable nature, and that this infused and informed the government to go that extra step in addressing this intractable multi-decade problem of gang violence and to eradicate this gang violence. And this is part of the whole picture here and the Bitcoin Country brand. Additionally, education has been a key component. This is with Lina and her work. This is part of the education, and we talked to Lina about that and how to get little Hodler into schools and to that demographic. There's another demographic of the Me Premier Bitcoin, which is a textbook, which is kind of K through 12, I guess you could say. Then there's the Cubo Plus, which is really an elite program. Stacy brought in the best teachers in the world for Cubo Plus. And talk about being out of your comfort zone. These Cubo Plus students, for the first time in their lives, traveled on a plane, left El Salvador, went to Switzerland, went to Italy, and came back worldly. They came back like, let me tell you something, there's a big world out there. And they're out there talking to their friends and all over the country, and it's just having this great impact. It's just multiplying interest in what's happening in the world. And Salvadorans were very reticent about even leaving their home for years because of the gang violence. I have a funny anecdote about a guy who said, before Bukele, my house was too small. After Bukele, my house is too big. It's like, well, what do you explain that? He said, well, before Bukele, we never left the house and we're all crammed together because it was not safe at all to leave the house. After Bukele, it's completely safe to leave the house. Nobody's in the house. They left. They're out doing stuff. It's not like I got all this house, but nobody's in the house, right? And it's just that step into what used to be a gang zone for people that couldn't put their foot in that zone for their entire lives is incredibly liberating to say, you know what? This is my country now. This is our country now. And the meme after the election that just had was, finally, El Salvador is ours.
Oh, wow.
It's ours, finally, after 200 years, really, because they go back 200 years. This country's always been occupied in one way or another. The U.S. is no friend to El Salvador.
I'm shocked. The United States mishandled some countries in Latin
US,
America?
That speaks as though they're protecting democratic values in El Salvador. But, let's talk about, the priest down in the Central Church that was assassinated by the CIA. That's not a very friendly thing to do, right? That's not how you make friends. You don't kill your priests on the steps.
Don't help foster a civil war. That's
right. That's not a friendly thing to do.
It's not a fun thing.
Right. So, so it's never really been theirs. And the president is articulates this brilliantly and exemplifies this. El Salvador is ours. It's finally ours, and they come out to it. So education, and that includes the civil servants. So, it's a bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy has thousands of people in that bureaucracy all over the country, and every single one of those bureaucrats is a point of entry for a shitcoin, because any shitcoin that can go to a bureaucrat and who doesn't know Bitcoin yet, but it sounds good because shitcoiners are good salespeople. And then next thing they know, they're taking a photo with that bureaucrat. And then the next thing you know, they're posting that photo somewhere. And then they've got a shitcoin somewhere. And they're spinning a yarn about their shitcoin in El Salvador and glomming onto the brand, glomming onto the Bukele phenomenon. And initially, of course, you get that burst of a price move, a pump and dump. And it feeds on itself until it collapses, and it always collapses, and everything always goes to zero against Bitcoin. But it's kind of like herding cats, to tell you the truth. It's not fucking easy because you've got a large bureaucracy, and every single one is a point of failure in any government. This is why orange pilling a nation state is fucking hard. It really is, because people who are drawn to politics, they're not entrepreneurial. They're not necessarily, I don't want to get into a negative thing here, but I mean, think of your local teacher, PTA meeting, parent teacher association, or your local, the Karens in Walmart who are harassing people in the parking lot. I mean, those are wannabe politicians. I mean, if you want to be a politician, like, what the fuck are you doing?
Just go to a homeowners association board meeting.
Why are you doing this, right? So, you're trying to wrangle, a real interesting character. So it's hard to do. And, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So it's actually more work than we anticipated, to tell you the truth. Because even though the president is brilliant in articulating the vision of Bitcoin and economic freedom, and he gets Bitcoin and he meets with Bitcoiners, and he's a totally orange-pilled guy. It's still a bureaucracy with thousands of people, and a lot of people in interesting positions who do lots of different things. And those people, if they're not on board, they are sticking a knife into the Salvadoran people. They're sticking a knife into the leadership of this country. They're sticking a knife into every person out there who is yearning to be free from the dollar, from the IMF, from shitcoins. I don't have any mercy for these people. And, occasionally I vocalize as such, and I'm willing to die on this hill. Like, I got nothing to lose. Like, I don't have any family other than Stacy. Like, my parents are dead. I have no kids. I have no brothers or sisters. I am a fucking lone wolf. And if you fuck with me, I'm going to fucking tear your head off and shit down your neck. That's my message to anybody who tries to fuck with the Bitcoin Country brand. Okay, I am a fucking unhinged character who's been totally orange-pilled, who will stop at nothing. If I feel that this project's going off the rails, I don't give a shit who you are. You're going down, buddy. You're going down. It's not going to be pretty because I don't give a shit. I've got so much fucking Bitcoin, I could buy this country. Don't force me to buy this country and then fire all these fuckers. Don't make me have to do that. But I will if I have to. It's like a $28 billion economy. I got that in my sock. That's fucking nothing to me. Don't anger me. Okay, I'm telling you, don't fucking do it. Okay, that's my warning. That's my fucking warning. Okay, put it out there.
All right.
They crossed me, I tell you. Shit's gonna hit the fan. Okay, we will stop at nothing. The shit we've been through to stop these shitcoiners already. It's been epically annoying.
Yeah, didn't you stop CZ and a bunch of these clowns?
Every big name shitcoiner out there tried to come in. And they all got halfway down the road before they got fucking their heads ripped off. Some of them were escorted to the airport and thrown out of this country. Okay, I'm not going to name names today, but they were literally escorted out of the country. Okay, and look, if anybody's going to go against this, I pity them. I really do. I pity them and their family. I really do. They don't know what a New Yorker is all about. They like, we had gangs for 20 years. I'm like, yeah, MS-13 is a fucking pansy-ass nobody compared to an outraged New Yorker. And the people say, oh, you were here during the biggest violence when all these people got murdered. And I went outside and I'm like, yeah, it's like 42nd Street, 1978. It means nothing to me. Like, I've seen it all, buddy. You think this is a horror show? Talk to me about New York City in 1977. That was a fucking freak show and a horror show. That's where I come from, right? He's like, it's MS-13. They've got tattoos. They're so dangerous. Like, fuck you, buddy. Come at me right now, and I will fucking eviscerate you. All right, now I speak for Satoshi. I am Satoshi's representative on Earth. I am the bishop of Bitcoin. I am the high priest of Bitcoin. Nobody fucks with me and survives. That's the bottom line. Okay, little Hodler, I like him. He's cute. He's going to kill him last. But that's it. That's my bottom line. Okay, go to comments. Go to commercials. I don't give a shit. Whoever wants to show up and argue with me on this point, I invite them. Bring you, your friends, an army, a tank. It doesn't make any difference. I will win because I have Bitcoin on my side.
One of the comments says the Bronx looked like Dresden after the war. Yeah, the Bronx of the 70s was gnarly.
The Bronx in the 70s was on fire. And there were over 3,000 murders a year in New York in the 70s.
Oh,
And, it was a really devastating environment. But from that came punk rock,
yeah.
hip hop. Andy Warhol became the artistic center of the world before he moved to Berlin after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And I think El Salvador could be the next stop for the global artist population. It's cheap. Go to Ilopango. You can get a flat for $200 a month, living on a lake. It's completely safe now. The mayor is a Bitcoiner, and start an art movement. This should be the artist colony of this decade. It's cheap. It's happening. Come to El Salvador and express yourself.
That's why I'm here. That's honestly why I'm here. That's one thing I've noticed in the Bitcoin space. Not a lot of artists, not a lot of creative people. I've been to 2 Bitcoin only conferences, Swan Bitcoin and Adopting. I was the only comedian there amongst thousands of people. And I'm like, all right, cool. This is an opportunity. And let's get artists. And I want to create a Bitcoin film studio. I want to do all this creative stuff down here. And I think I want to attract artists here. And I think El Salvadorians, after 4 decades of violence and civil war, they want to express themselves. They have like you say, all those people in that guy's house, that one house isn't a great example of all of El Salvador. They were stuck in that house. They couldn't go outside. Now they can. So now you get to go outside. You want to express yourself. There's artwork in El Tunco on the walls and El Zonte. Yeah. There's all this great artwork happening. People are hanging out in the downtown square. This studio is all these El Salvadorians are putting this together to make this artistic expression happen.
Someone's going to break through. We work with a guy named Mario Flamenco, who's Salvadoran. And he has an idea about fashion and perfume and cologne business. And brilliant ideas. And that guy could break out. He could be the Salvadoran Dior or the Salvadoran Tom Ford. Because El Salvador is the next art destination. Yeah. He's the right age. He looks the part. He's got a cool name, Mario Flamenco.
Boom.
This sounds already like he's famous. Buy that. I'd buy it in a heartbeat, right? Mario Flamenco cologne. It's like, give me 10 gallons and
use a Costco size.
Yeah, give me a 10-gallon tank and a 9mm. I'm gonna head uptown and party.
Have you been to the art museum, the Museum of Art?
I've not been there.
By the Sheraton. It's very interesting to see. They have art from during the time of the Civil War, and you can see the progression. You can see the change in style, right? And they have, at least when I last went, it was last year, they had an exhibition. I'm not sure if it was a temporary one, but they were showing art by young students. It was really beautiful. They had a whole section where it was like comics, and they did a lot of, interestingly, a lot of like manga and anime related stuff. That was very interesting to see. A lot of like installations that looked like Star Wars. It's really, really cool. But what I found fascinating is it was very young artists. Like it was students. They were like 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. And I love to see that.
I think there's going to be a whole generation of El Salvadorian artists in all different mediums, painting, music, rap.
Definitely. That's what's coming.
They're coming, and they're just going to have all this stuff to say because they witnessed this transformation. So we're just about done here, but before we go, Lina, what are you excited about? Not just like in the Bitcoin space in general, but also here in El Salvador. What are you excited about, like in the future that's coming, that you see like coming on the horizon?
I'm excited about El Salvador. People back home, people think I'm crazy. I'm like, oh, it's so great. Everybody's so happy. Everybody's looking forward to, like, Max is wearing a Bukele 2029.
2029.
Already out.
He's going to win 2029.
Already ready.
Since everyone's freaking out about 2024, wait until 2029.
It's great to see. It's great to see the progress and the speed at which things are progressing. One thing I always feel, and we tend to like blame entire generations. So we're like, oh, we're born in the wrong generation, and we're human. We like to simplify complex things, but you always tend to feel like you're born too late to benefit from economic boom. You're born right into like a bunch of
Or
crises.
like you missed the 60s, right? People feel like, oh, I missed the 60s.
This, I missed that.
But to your point, there's always some place in the world that is the 60s.
Yes, and it's like you found it. So here, it feels like it almost feels like a secret tip. It's like, hold on, you can actually get involved in something and grow with it and contribute to the progress of it. I haven't seen that before. All I've seen in my life so far is people saying, "Oh, I have so much debt. Oh, politics is bad in my country. Oh, the economy is shit. Oh, everything's getting more expensive. I can't afford a house. I can't afford my rent. I can't afford a car." And then here you go and you see things are growing and you can, I mean, that's why I ended up coming here too. Like I actually want to be a part of it. I feel welcome here for once. So that excites me. And I tell people back home, I'm in Germany, we're a very skeptical country. People are like, 999. So, and then they come here and they're like, oh yeah. So it's
999. I felt that.
Yes, it's in our hearts. It's the first thing. With a German, you always start at 9. So it's crazy. And that's why I say you have to come here and you have to see it to believe it, because we can talk about it all we want. Once you come here, you'll understand. And that excites me.
They're just welcoming everyone. You have a feeling of being welcomed. And totally. It's nobody is like, they just look at you like, hey, come on.
When I came here for the first time in June, I can't remember that many. I'm trying to think of times in my life where I felt like, oh, wow, this is an amazing. When I first learned how to surf, that was like I got back from doing a show in a war zone that was gnarly. We got shot at. I saw this awful stuff and I was like, oh, war is awful. And I learned how to surf. It was like that world opened up to me. I was like, oh, surfing is magic. When I first, in the podcasting, we started the Los Angeles Podcast Festival in 2012 when podcasting was still sort of new, and it had this similar sort of like when I was at these Bitcoin conferences, I was like, oh, no one at this conference needs to explain what Bitcoin is to anybody. And that's what the early days of podcasting were, because you had all these people like, what channel is it on? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but Bitcoin is like bigger than all of these things because it's money, it's global, and it's because it's decentralized, it takes away the power and the old everything, and it's all age groups are in it. It's not just like, oh, the young people get it, the baby boomers, they don't get it, or the kids. It's everyone. You get it and figure it out on your time at your space, and then when you get it, and this light goes off, and the hope. There's no hope like this. There's no hope like this anywhere else.
The light goes on.
Yeah,
not off.
Oh, on. What did I say?
The light goes on, man. It goes on, man.
I'm using it goes off. I'm using a slang. Yes, the light goes off. Yes, the light goes off.
The light goes off.
It goes
and we're in darkness forever with Satoshi.
This is romantic.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Romantic, it is a beautiful thing. And again, it is nice when you're around other Bitcoiners. Like you see, you don't feel crazy. You know how many people I've been telling, they're like, so what are you up to? I'm like, I'm going to go to Salvador for 2-3 months at least and do this podcast. And I eventually want to get a place down there and stay down there and make it. And people just kind of look at me like, oh, wow, Graham's going to go. You're going to find the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot down there, buddy? You're just going to like, oh, wow, that's great.
It's so foreign to people.
It's the shrimps, the crabs. Yeah.
They think I'm nuts. Yeah. They think I'm crazy. But that's why we're all here. We're all a little nuts.
Yeah, Graham. So glad you did come down here. It's I think you're the first of this kind of podcasting group, really. I mean, I've talked to a few people, and they all say they might. You finally came down here, so it's. I think, you're shaking things up, which is fantastic.
That's what I'm here to do. So
you might never leave.
I don't.
That sounded creepier than I wanted it to.
You might not. That sounded culty. You might never leave. We're gonna brand you. No, I mean, I'm sure I might have to jump up to LA for a couple of things, but overall, I'm here. I'm in.
I'll be curious to hear like the culture shock of going back to LA.
Yeah.
I was in Paris for 5 years, and I landed in LA for the first time, and to drive from LAX into Santa Monica through those streets of strip malls and fast food joints, I literally started crying.
Yeah.
Like, this is fucking hell. Like, I was just in the Champs-Elysees 9 hours ago, and here I am at a fucking Wendy's on a strip mall near LAX. What did I do to deserve this? God.
I know what I'll be doing. I'll be putting on my wetsuit in LA going, oh, it's going to be freezing in that water because the water here is so warm and
Oh,
great.
yeah.
I surfed yesterday. It was so great. I've got this board. It's beautiful. Anyway, Lina, where can people follow you online and follow your stuff if they're new so they can learn about your Hodler and everything?
Yes, they can follow me on my very German handle, which is Lina Seiche, which is Seiche. And that's my handle, Lina. And then my website, hodler.com. So that's like all my comics are there, and all my plushies are there, and all my stuff is there. And yes.
So is Lina, how do you pronounce the last name?
Seiche.
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 Yeah. It's a great language.
It is.
Yeah.
Ausgezeichnet. That's I know about 6 German words.
Excuse me?
Ausgezeichnet.
Ausgezeichnet.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, The Simpsons, what's his name? The rich guy, Burns.
Yeah, yes,
He
Mr.
always
Burns.
does this one. I don't know what he
Mr.
says.
Burns.
What does he say in English when he does this one? Excellent or something?
Oh,
in
yeah.
German,
Excellent.
In German, he says Ausgezeichnet.
Yeah, that's my father always used that word. My father was fluent in German. He always used that
Oh,
word.
the German Simpsons. Okay, well.
Well, that's our show. Thank you, Lina. Max,
Thank you.
I'm Graham. We appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Like, share, subscribe. Do all those things that help the analytics. Share this out on your social media. Follow at Orange Pill Podcast. Follow at Max Keiser, at Graham Elwood, at Lina Seiche. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day. Orange Pill your friends.